As you may have noticed, you can watch Freedom Rocks for free on RCTV or on YouTube, but it takes money to produce good quality TV shows. You can support Freedom Rocks by shopping at our Cafe Press shop. There you can find t-shirts for men and women, tote and gym bags, coffee mugs, beer steins, food and beverage thermoses, and a bunch of other items Cafe Press offers. You can find our shop at cafepress.com/freedomrocks, all lowercase and no apostrophe.
Welcome to Freedom Rocks. The producer of this show is Max Kessler, and also the executive director. My name is Mark Glogowski. I'm a libertarian. Before we get started, I'd like to point out that this is an election year for local races, and over in Batavia, we have a couple libertarians for the new chapter of Genesee County Libertarian Party. They're running for the Batavia City Council. Their names are James Rosenbeck and Lisa Whitehead. If you see them or you're out that way, give them your support and your consideration. I'm sure they would appreciate it. You may have heard people say many times, wake up, America. Wake up to what? I'm awake. Well, I think I'm going to try to clarify what you're supposed to wake up to. You've heard me say it before, and I'm going to say it again. The structure of our society, the structure that the U.S. Constitution was designed to create and preserve, has been destroyed. It was destroyed in 1913 when the 16th Amendment was created, was ratified. Ever since then, Americans have had to report to the federal government every penny they earn. Legal, illegal, gambling, it doesn't matter. It's not your money. If we want to be free again, we need to rescind the 16th Amendment. Now, what really bothers me about the 16th Amendment is that the worldview that created the 16th Amendment is a worldview that tolerates tyranny. And we have tyranny in this country. And today we wanted to bring up a topic that you may not be comfortable with, but it's a topic that you will hear more and more in the next year or so. And that topic is the state nullification of federal law and the criminalization of federal agents enforcing federal law. So with that, I'd like to ask our guest, Max Kessler, to expound a little bit on what he believes are the main issues relative to nullification of federal law. Max?
Well, one of the problems is that the federal government has been seizing more and more power ever since, pretty much ever since the turn of the last century. It's been
1913.
Well, it's actually...
It actually happened before that.
Yeah.
The worldview was being adopted before that, right. And that was basically the climax.
But 1913 was when the federal government first had personal income taxing power, and that was when they first said, hey, you know what? We're going to take the money, and we're going to tell the states, you do our bidding. Any law that we can't get through because it's unconstitutional, you're going to do it, or you're going to lose federal funding. And that's exactly what we have with the 21-year drinking age. Most libertarians would like to see that lowered. That's what we have with the 0.08 blood alcohol level for the threshold for DWI, threshold for a criminal offense. That was all mandated by the federal government in order to get our money back. Same thing goes for 18-year smoking age and the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit.
So basically you're saying that the federal government is dictating how we should run our lives.
Yes. Well, they're dictating what state laws have to be passed in order for states to get federal funding. And I know you're going to hate me for saying this, but it was actually Bill Clinton who repealed the 55-mile-an-hour federal speed limit.
Well, he repealed the 55-mile-an-hour federal speed limit, but they still have Doesn't the federal government still have control over the speed limit overall, or is it strictly state control now?
It's strictly state, except for areas in the United States that are outside of any state, like D.C. and the territories. But within every state, it's the state that sets the speed limit. The only reason the federal government had any control over it was because of this damn 16th Amendment, where they take your money away from you before you even have a chance to take it to the bank. They take it right out of your paycheck and then threaten your state with withholding funds if the state doesn't comply.
Well, isn't one of the biggest changes with the 16th Amendment the fact that the money flow in the country, which used to go from the cities, towns, and villages to the county, and then from the county to the state, and then from the state to the federal government, that flow changed? Our money went, because we now work for the federal government. It went straight from us to the federal government because it's their money.
It went from us to the federal government, then it goes to the states, thus making the states subservient.
Right. And in doing that, it pretty much eliminated the need for the state senators to represent the states. Is that correct? Because the state senators used to approve the budget and then come back to the states and justify the money that the federal government needed from the state. And now that the federal government has all the money, the state senators no longer needed to do that, so the federal government decided to have the state senators elected directly from the people. Well, didn't the states now lose their representation in the federal government?
Yes.
That's what the 17th Amendment did.
The 17th Amendment did. It essentially turned our House of Representatives and Senate into a large House of Representatives and a small House of Representatives.
And so the states have no representation.
Correct.
So we no longer have a republic. Because the states are not represented. We're not represented going up the chain with our...
Well, as far as whether it's a republic, basically that just means that individuals have rights that are protected from the will of the majority. Unfortunately, with the senators being elected by the popular vote, you lose a bunch of that. You lose a bunch of that protection because the Senate is no longer shielded from public opinion.
Okay, well, the states no longer have control over the federal budget. So there's no oversight of the federal budget by the state.
Right.
Well, when the states adopted the income tax, they pretty much took the money straight from the people to the states. They no longer had the flow of money coming up to the state. The money is now flowing down from the state. And all
from the feds?
No, from the state level, too.
Okay.
The states are now sending money to the local counties and the cities. So the money is flowing backwards from the way we were originally set up. We were set up so the money flowed from the smaller governmental unit to the higher, and now the money is all flowing from the higher governmental unit to the smaller.
Yeah.
And that all happened with one amendment. Yeah, that brings us to a problem of who has the authority. And we have now the federal government. We're going to have to take a break here, so we're going to come back in a minute.
Have you ever played WTF Sudoku?
You mean WTF as in what the f***?
Yes.
What the f*** is so all fired? What the f*** about Sudoku?
Regular Sudoku is played on a 9x9 grid with exactly one of every digit 1 through 9 in every row, column, and 3x3 grid.
So what?
WTF Sudoku is played on a 25x25 grid with exactly one of every letter A through Y in every row, column, and 5x5 group.
WTF. How can I play WTF Sudoku?
You can play it online at www.cybermansoftware.com/games. You can also buy a book of puzzles on Amazon.com. Just search for WTF Sudoku.
Book? You mean on paper?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's www.cybermansoftware.com/games or by searching for WTF Sudoku on Amazon.com?
Yes.
Okay, we're back. Okay, we're talking about the this change in the structure of our society and the fact that the money is flowing down from the upper governments to the lower governments, and even the county level to the local towns. This county sales tax is flowing backwards to the towns, and tax bills now have credits on them from the county. So the structure change was pretty dramatic. So the question I have is, when people in a single state decide they don't like a federal law, like the federal gun laws, who has the authority to determine whether the federal government's gun laws are constitutional or not constitutional?
Well, traditionally it's been the Supreme Court, which has been the pretty much ever since the Marbury versus Madison decision, where they made themselves the decider of what is or isn't constitutional. The Supreme Court has been the arbiter of what laws are constitutional or unconstitutional.
But in the, what is it, the Fourth Amendment? Let me just check this out.
Not the Fourth.
Article 4, where
Article 4.
Paragraph 2. We have these handy little books titled The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America.
Article 4, Section 2, you said?
Such important documents can be fit in just a little thin booklet. Article 4, Section 2 says, this Constitution, comma, and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, semicolon. Okay, so that part of it is self-contained, and it basically says the Constitution and any law made in pursuance of the Constitution, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land.
You sure it's Article 4?
Article 6. Article 6.
Article 6.
I'm sorry.
It's the Roman numerals.
I'm not a Roman.
Yeah. It's Article 6.
Article 6, okay. Now, this should be the supreme law of the land. But the problem is, it's got to be in this Constitution or in pursuance of this Constitution. And if somebody says in one of the states, this is an unconstitutional law, then it can't be in pursuance of this Constitution because the state declared it unconstitutional.
Correct.
And
there's a number
they're interpreting this as saying, well, we're giving the government, through the government Supreme Court, the right to determine whether it's constitutional, and that's now in violation of what the state says it should be their rights to determine what the Constitution means.
Well, now, there are some states that are overriding federal law or nullifying it. And in particular, Montana and a number of other pro-gun states have passed laws that said if a firearm is manufactured in that state and it's not sold out of that state, then it's not subject to federal commerce laws.
Yes, even Kansas passed a law that said if the Kansans manufactured semi-automatic weapons in their state and sold them in their state,
weapons. It's semi-automatic firearms.
Semi-automatic, well, the thing is firearms, okay? Yeah. That they do not need a federal license to manufacture or to sell. Now, that's a direct violation of federal law. Now, is this a nullification of federal law, or is it?
It's nullification. Unfortunately, the feds don't recognize nullification, so it's basically a he said, she said type of issue, which is it pretty much parallels California's compassionate use law, the medical marijuana law. And if you want to check the Supreme Court ruling Raich versus Gonzalez, it was the feds raided the home of Angel Raich, who was a medical marijuana patient, confiscated the plants, and effected an arrest under federal marijuana law, because for some inexplicable reason, the federal government considers marijuana more dangerous than heroin. So the feds arrested Raich, and the Supreme Court ruled that intrastate activities could be regulated under the Interstate Commerce Clause, even if they're illegal under Interstate Commerce Clause. The rationale was that if lots of medical marijuana patients in California were growing their own marijuana instead of buying it, that would have a depressing effect on the fair market value of marijuana in their communities. And if they were smoking it themselves instead of selling it, that would decrease the supply in the market, which would drive up the value. And if lots of folks in lots of communities around California were doing that, it would affect the market value in the state, which would affect the market value in interstate commerce, even though it's a completely illegal product under interstate commerce. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court agreed with the feds, or as Andrew Napolitano wrote in his book, Constitution in Exile, federal prosecutors blew smoke about Wickard and the court inhaled.
Blew smoke and what?
Blew smoke about Wickard. Wickard, Supreme Court case from the 1930s, where someone was arrested for wheat. He grew too much wheat. More wheat than the American Agriculture Act allowed him to grow.
So what happens now with a bill that legalizes marijuana, like the state of Washington?
Washington
now,
and Colorado?
It's not a nullification.
Well, that is actually nullification, because they're saying, hey, look, well, this law is invalid. We're not going to enforce it.
Well, no, what it says is, we're not going to charge you a state penalty. The federal penalty is still there. They didn't nullify it. They didn't say, like Kansas did, is that you don't need federal oversight. It's not legal. You don't need a federal license. So, legalizing something is still different than nullification. So nullification is like what Pennsylvania wants to do, is basically say the U.S. gun statutes of all types are unconstitutional and make it a criminal offense for any federal agent to enforce federal law in Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah. Colorado, we're coming up on a break.
Yeah, we are. Okay, we're coming up on a break, and we'll be right back.
Did you know high-quality versions of all episodes of Freedom Rocks are available on DVD? Each DVD contains 3 episodes for just $15. We also have specials that aren't on RCTV or YouTube. You can find links to all of our DVDs on the Freedom Rocks website, freedomrocks.cybermansoftware.com.
Okay. Here we were talking about the Pennsylvania law that they want to enact. There's 76 state legislators that have signed on already. So and this is a pretty serious situation if you're going to start criminalizing federal agents. I mean, it goes down a path that I would like to take, and which means federal agents of any type cannot enforce federal laws. They all have to be enforced by the county sheriff. And the federal agent wants to enforce something. Or
state police or city police or whomever has jurisdiction.
Whoever has jurisdiction, but county, the government, the federal government cannot enforce federal laws. They have to be enforced by state laws, by state officers or other officials.
Yeah, so the legalization of recreational marijuana in Colorado and Washington didn't actually say they're going to be arresting federal employees who enforce the laws, and well, I think it's a step in the right direction, but I would definitely like to see federal agents arrested for enforcing unconstitutional federal laws.
Now we go right back to who determines that it's unconstitutional, because in some of these states they're saying we have the right, and in one opinion I read, if a state determines that a federal law is unconstitutional and they declare it unconstitutional, the U.S. Supreme Court, according to this opinion, cannot challenge that if the state does not bring the matter to the Supreme Court to make a ruling. But the minute they bring it to the Supreme Court to make a ruling, the state gives up jurisdiction and the authority to determine that it's unconstitutional. So from that perspective, the state has the right to say it's unconstitutional and within their authority to ignore that law.
Okay, and this information comes from the Cato Institute?
I believe it was the Cato Institute that it came from.
Okay. Because, yeah, definitely we need more nullification of unconstitutional laws.
And we need to have a recognition of what is unconstitutional, and that takes us right back to where it starts, which is the 16th Amendment. Because if there's anything that's unconstitutional, it's something that changes the structure of our society. And when you look at the 16th Amendment, creating the 17th Amendment, creating the Federal Reserve, creating the IRS, and everything that the 16th Amendment did in terms of giving power to Congress to control everything that has to do with money. If it has to do with money, you're not free. If it doesn't have to do with money, you can do anything you want. You want to walk through the woods? Fine, as long as a private enterprise doesn't tell you can't do that. You want to stand on the street corner and talk? You can do that. It doesn't cost money. But the minute you spend money, government's involved. As long as it doesn't violate local loitering. Well, yeah, it's the local loitering. Because you need money in order not to loiter.
Yeah. What is it?
It's a vagrant. If you don't have like $5 or $10 or some certain denominational amount of money in your pocket, you're a vagrant. And if you're just standing around doing nothing, you're a vagrant. You're loitering. So
how much is that? How much is that dollar value in the city of Rochester?
I don't know.
Okay, I thought it was you who told me once. But yeah, if you're out in public. In a public place in the city of Rochester, and you don't have at least a certain amount of cash on you, you're a vagrant. Yeah,
I don't think credit cards work.
But I don't know. That might be sufficient evidence of means of support.
Okay, could be. So I guess what it boils down to is, in our country, with all these states, I think there's like 7 of them that have already passed or proposed to pass a statement saying that the federal gun control laws are unconstitutional. So we're actually challenging the constitutionality of laws passed by Congress. And we have people that are saying that our president right now today is overreaching his authority. He's violating the Constitution.
Of course he is.
And the Supreme Court, they're referring to the Supreme Court as being basically a dictator. Now, I can understand the Supreme Court's statement relative to Obamacare, that Obamacare is a tax. Congress has the authority to issue a tax. Rescind the 16th Amendment if you don't like that. But they believe that the Supreme Court can change things. It can't change things. Congress has to change it, and we have to insist that they change it. I don't think that's going to happen until people understand.
And amend the Constitution if necessary.
And amend the Constitution as necessary.
Yeah, because we all know there's a huge disagreement about what the Second Amendment means. Okay, fine. So amend the Constitution to say that every person who's never been convicted of a felony has the right to keep and bear arms. Pass an amendment that says it's not connected with military service. And I think
we need to pass an amendment that says you have the right to protect yourself, because we don't have an amendment that says that.
Well, I think now you distracted me. Lost my chain of thought. But I think we need a constitutional amendment to say that yes, people have a right to defend themselves. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I think the confusion comes from the spelling similarity between the words militia and military.
That could be.
Because I think a lot of people are confused over that because they see militia and they think military.
What's the difference in your mind in terms of the Second Amendment?
The difference is that the militia was the whole body, essentially the whole body of free adult male citizens.
Right, white male.
Free
White male citizens is what it actually reads.
No. It was all free adult male citizens, regardless of their race. There were freed slaves who were considered part of the militia.
Now, when the Constitution was written, when the
Second Amendment was written, yes, there were former slaves who had been freed. There were black folks who lived up north and in free states, and they were free citizens.
Okay, we're coming to a conclusion here. One last comment.
Just one quick last. New York State, at the time the Constitution was ratified, the militia was the whole body of able-bodied adult male citizens from 16 to 44 years of age.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to meeting with you again.
Did you know Freedom Rocks has swag? You can help stimulate the economy and show how much you like Freedom Rocks at the same time. We've got t-shirts for men and women. We've got coffee mugs and beer steins. We've got food and beverage thermoses. You can get your own Freedom Rocks swag with the show logo, as seen in the opening title of the show, right here at our Cafe Press shop. That's cafepress.com/freedomrocks.